Hallo, guten Nachmittag.
Hallo.
Bonjour.
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 Bonjour, Peda.
zusammen.
Hallo miteinander.
Bonjour. Well, it's difficult for me to know if everyone is there because there are a lot of everyone. So I'm really happy to open this this first workshop of SwissCollNet on behalf of all the team and the SCNAT who helped me to organize it and who's really behind the whole project. Some of them are here from the steering board of SwissCollNet and from the board of experts. We are really happy to see so many of you today because it's a good sign of your motivation and your interest in the project, and it's a really important thing for us. Before we start with the program, I have a couple of traditional technical information to give to you. Of course, if you could switch off your microphones when you're not speaking and switch them on when you are speaking as well. If you want to say something, there is a reaction button to raise the hand because well, it's difficult to see if you have a reaction. Of course, if we don't see you after some point, you can also say something. And if you can write your full name and your institution, if you have enough space on your name, it will help with the contacts during this meeting. And I also inform you that we are recording this first part because it's we may put it on the website, and it's also a good tool for us to keep track of the questions and the discussions for later on. As you have seen, we have two main parts in the program. So this first part with the presentations, and then the second part with informal discussions. About the second part, I'll give you some information when it's needed. So I don't give you all the instructions now. But for this first part of presentations, the idea is to have a long time at the end of the presentations to discuss and for questions. And so the questions, if you have some during the presentation, you can use the chat to write them. And Anne Jacob from the SCNAT, who's here, if you will see her, she will monitor this chat, and she will redirect the questions during the question phase at the end of the presentations. And of course, if we have some more time and there are more questions, we can all, of course, ask already the questions, but we feel it's a rather efficient way of directing the questions. I guess you have all relevant information for now. What I'll do now is forward you a small poll, 3 questions, a very difficult one. No, it's a good way for us to have a feeling of what are your intentions and how you feel about submitting a project and collaborating. I'll let you a couple of minutes to fill this in. Well, I think 90% of the persons voted. So I guess we can stop the poll here. I'll try to comment it very quickly, but so yeah, it's really good to see that a lot of persons are motivated to submit a project, and it's really for us this first workshop is really an opportunity for us to explain what are our ideas and where we are in the process of defining these project goals. And it's true, it's an objective also of SwissCollNet to encourage the collaborations and to see that this is an issue, there is an interest, but also to find the right partners is an issue, and we also try to help you through that. And it's the aim of the group discussions. It's our first step to have people talk together. With this first insight, I'll give the word to Jürg Pfister, who will give the first presentation of this workshop. He'll talk about the role of the SCNAT and its vision on SwissCollNet. So thank you, Jürg. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Aline. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, geschätzte Damen und Herren, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen. Au nom de l'Académie des Sciences, je vous souhaite la bienvenue pour ce workshop SwissCollNet. Seien Sie alle aufs Herzlichste willkommen. Pour que nous nous comprenions un peu mieux, wechsle ich jetzt ebenfalls ins Englische und hoffen, dass das dann klappt. Welcome to the SwissCollNet workshop. Frankly, I believe the term workshop seems to be quite a modest expression for today's event, which actually marks the beginning of a whole new phase of this initiative. We have now concluded a 4 years preparatory phase. It had started in June 2017 already, when we put up for discussion the relevance of natural history collections for science and research at the annual retreat of the Academy's board. Since then, SCNAT and many highly committed personalities from the sciences, from museums, from collections, have laid the foundations for this program, for instance, by elaborating the report, which you'll know, the report on the national significance of natural history collections in Switzerland, by introducing this issue on the national research policy agenda, and finally also by fighting for its funding in the political arena, especially in the federal parliament. Please allow me to say that SCNAT played here a specific role, which I dare to say is almost part of its DNA. We consider the Academy to be a national platform for scientific communities to deal with their paramount challenges, independent from specific research institutions. Thus, we contribute to the further development of scientific communities and of the framework conditions for science and research in Switzerland. And with regard to these framework conditions, SwissCollNet is of utmost importance. The natural history collections in Switzerland are not only relevant for the museums and research institutes that own and host them. Collectively, you all are aware of that, but I think we have to reiterate it sometimes. Collectively, these collections are really a national treasure. And in times of debate on open science, this treasure must be made more accessible to the scientific enterprise in general. And on the way to achieve this, we are now entering a new phase. I do see two major challenges ahead of us until the end of the year 2024. The first one is simply to implement now the program that we have finally managed to build and for which 12.4 million francs are entrusted to us to implement this program as best as we can. Today's workshop is devoted to this. In the coming years, we want to lay the foundations for the Swiss virtual natural history collection by agreeing on shared standards in collection management and in databasing and digitization, and by developing the necessary infrastructures to allow a centralized access to all specimen data stored in the Swiss institutions. And this will be not an easy job, I guess. But we have a major second challenge ahead of us. It is about establishing SwissCollNet in the Swiss scientific and cultural landscape beyond the year 2024. Please allow me to elaborate on this in a more explicit way, because I think it's very important. The main obstacle that we have faced in the preparation of this program was that the federal authorities consider the issue of collections not to be of any major concern for science and research policy, but rather for the cultural arena. Subsequently, they have asked the cantons should deal with it, and more specifically, fully pay for it. It was only the parliament that finally imposed the program against the will of the government. As a consequence, the federal authorities now strictly demand from us that from 2025 onwards, the initiative must be fully borne by the cantons. And we know the initiative will not end in 2024. There is a lot more work to be done. But there will be no more federal support, according to the federal authorities. Now, of course, SCNAT continuously tries to demonstrate that this is a somewhat strange perception, and we try to find ways for a continued national commitment. One key word in that respect is, of course, Swiss BioCollection, which has been introduced into the biology research infrastructure roadmap that the community has elaborated under the umbrella of SCNAT to the attention of the federal authorities and research institutions. But it is obvious, it is extremely important that this initiative will be anchored in a much stronger way than today in the cantons. So I believe there is a crucial role for SwissCollNet, but for all of you individually and your institutions. We absolutely need to establish SwissCollNet by 2025 in a setting that takes into more responsibility the cantons. And I really would like to appeal to you not to underestimate this challenge. I think we need to be imaginative, persistent, and we have to enter into a strong dialogue with the relevant actors on the cantonal and also local level. And here we need all of you. SCNAT can help with this matter, but it cannot solve it without you. So that was a sort of the sermon. Amen, I dare to say. But now, of course, I really want to express my deepest appreciation and thanks to all those who have helped in the past that we were able to reach the point where we stand today. It really is the result of a joint effort of many people who have mobilized their experience and energy to contribute to this endeavor. People who work in collections, the members of the steering board and of the board of experts, and of course, my colleagues from SCNAT Secretariat. Many, many thanks to all of you. But now let's advance to the core of this afternoon. Let's start by that also this new phase of SwissCollNet, which is a promising, a challenging phase. And I wish just every possible success to this initiative and to all of you. And I thank you for your attention. And now let's go to the meat or to the beef. Thank you very much for your attention. Please, Aline.
Thank you, Jürg, for this kind words of motivation and of insights. Of course, the challenges are really numerous in front of us. And I see that Peter and Christoph have a comment to do? No? Okay. Christoph, no? Okay. If this is not the case, I now give the floor to Christoph Scheidegger, who is a professor at VSL and president of SwissCollNet. He is the right person to tell you what's been going on in the last years, but also to give you a hint of what is about to happen in the 4 next years. Christoph, if you may, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Aline. Can you see my shared screen? It's a pleasure to give a short introduction into this program, SwissCollNet, especially the current phase from 21 to 24. The aim of this workshop is to inform you about the implementation of SwissCollNet and especially give preliminary information about the upcoming call for project proposals. SwissCollNet had very, very little time to prepare because the final financial decision were just taken in December, late December 2020, and we couldn't start well before the start of the project. So currently we are preparing all the information for the project calls, and we wish to give you as much preliminary information about this call that you can get prepared and be prepared for submitting proposals in October, December. Then another object of this workshop is to gather feedback and information from your side and provide information for SwissCollNet and give you the possibility to start networking and exchange ideas for the proposals. The situation in 2018, as Jürg Pfister lined out, was we started collecting information about the current situation of natural history objects. We were aware or became aware that more than 60 million of objects are deposited in natural history museums, including 192 100,000 types, distributed all over Switzerland, sometimes in larger collections, but many more smaller natural history museums are around that are a bit isolated. And all these natural history collections provide a lot of information and specimens from zoology, botany, and what we shouldn't miss are all the collections related to geology, mineralogy, and paleontology. During the first phase, we established all the preconditions for a construction phase. We started with a survey of natural history collections. Most of you contributed, looking what collections are available in their natural history museums. Then we started to define data generation standards and establish governance and funding principles. And by December, we got the go ahead with this second phase, and that's where we are now. The aim is now to create a national research infrastructure through implementation of projects in 4 modules on conditioning, determination, redetermination, databasing, and revision of natural history collections, digitisation, develop best practices and quality standard implementation, training of taxonomic experts, and valorization of natural history collections and outreach. And this phase will last until 24. This is the current SwissCollNet initiative. And phase 3 to come includes an operational phase where we hope that some activities can be included in the Swiss roadmap of research infrastructures. Jürg Pfister mentioned it briefly, on collection management and digitization programs, to continue with that and to continue also with education and training programs. However, this Swiss roadmap of research infrastructures, this mainly applies to research institutions from Swiss universities and the ETH domain. It is not so much focused for the cantonal natural history collections. There we really have to find out the way how collections, cantonal collections, or even collections from communities or cities can profit from this Swiss roadmap of research infrastructure, the Swiss BioCollection, and the parallelly developed research infrastructures from the geosciences. Some of the main achievements during our phase 1 between 18 and 20, that was the creation of a network of collection holding institutions, identification of best practices, the publication of the handbook that most of you will have received and which is available as a PDF. Then we have established contacts with international initiatives, including GBIF and DISCO. We have drafted the first version for a national strategy. Most of you will also have seen this draft. Then we have developed this Swiss BioCollection in the framework of the biology roadmap for the phase 25 and 28, which has been published earlier this year, and where the process is now fully underway, where Swiss universities and ETH board are discussing possibilities to include some of the ideas that were expressed in this biology roadmap. And last but not least, we were able to secure funding for this phase 21 to 24, the 12.4 million Swiss francs funding from the state, from the federation, and additionally the same amount of money through self-funding of the institutions. We have also worked on the governance for this current SwissCollNet initiative. We have set up a steering board with its duties mostly on steering decisions, funding conditions, evaluate annual reporting, communicate with SwissCollNet and with third parties, including policymakers, administration, Swiss research funding bodies and institutions of higher education, and to plan the follow-up of the initiative. And second, the Board of Experts, with its mission to mainly technically and methodologically support the project, define the required standards, monitor the international development, prepare the calls, and support the steering board in proposal evaluations, and prepare progress reports. The steering board, some of the members are present today: Peter Wandeler, Britta Allgöver, Felix Althaus, and Barbara König are currently available in this meeting, or at least I have seen. Maybe other people are present as well. And the Board of Experts with Ali Cibois, Michel Price, Michael Gref, Werner Eugster, Loic Goster, and Nadir Alvarez, they are present in the current meeting. Holger Frick can't join today. And last but not least, the scientific unit of SCNAT with Aline Dépraz, who is leading today's meeting, and Pia Steiger, which is currently on a sabbatical leave, a short sabbatical leave, unfortunately only. She will come back soon. So for the 21-24 main goals, set the foundations for the Swiss Virtual Natural History Collection. By agreeing on applying shared standards in collection management, databasing, and digitization, and do part of the job. By developing the necessary infrastructure for a centralized and open access to specimen data, it is clear that we won't be able to digitize all the 60 million specimens, but we hope to do a good share of them in the current phase. Funding principles. The State Secretariat allocated 12.4 million to the SwissCollNet initiative, and an equivalent amount in matching funds is expected, especially from the collecting holding institutions. Peter Wandeler will talk more about that in a few minutes. And these federal funds will be subdivided in 3 main categories, including management, communication and network development, infrastructural projects to create the virtual natural history collection, and third and most importantly, inter-institutional projects, which will be announced by calls for project proposals. The implementation includes infrastructure for the Swiss Virtual Natural History Collection in a preparatory phase, creation of the infrastructure, including modernization and digitization of the collection, collection survey, which will continue during this autumn, network development, national and international connections, sustainability of the initiative, institution financing, especially for the time after 24. And finally, a national strategy for the years to come. The Swiss Virtual Natural History Collection will create the necessary infrastructure for a centralized access to specimen data of the Swiss natural history collections. Currently, a working group, data management under the lead of Michael Gref, is developing or sorting out the requirements for this Swiss Virtual Natural History Collection, and an ongoing preparatory phase will evaluate the potential options for this infrastructure. The collection survey, we have already done a part of it, started in 2018, will need to be carried out in more details and will show and advocate for the diversity and the importance of the Swiss collections, improve the visibility on a national and international scale, and share the information to strengthen the network and facilitate collaborations. We will also sort out links to the geosciences in more detail during this assessment. And last, this national strategy 25 to 35 have a 10-year national strategy for the natural history collections at the end of 24, ready to be implemented. A few words to the Swiss BioCollection, the suggested infrastructure in the roadmap. The objective will be to support the Swiss BioCollections for its inclusion in the federal infrastructure of research, the roadmap, and contribute to the sustainability of SwissCollNet goals, including decentralized infrastructure to assemble, store, and manage information on samples and specimens from natural history collections and from biobanks, from non-medical biobanks. This will be an important part that will not be included during the current phase, but which is foreseen to be included during this Swiss BioCollection program. And further on, the physical and virtual infrastructures, including geoscience, developed and proposed in the geosciences roadmap, centralized curation and storage facility for unique geosamples, a platform to unify the access to the large variety of geoscientific data sets. That's a brief overview on SwissCollNet from my side. Questions can be asked at the end of this part on presentation, and I give over to Aline.
Yes. Thank you, Christoph. It's a very dense overview of what's been done and what's going on. And as you could see, and I guess what's directly interesting you is the call for project proposals that are coming later this year. And so now the idea is to really focus on these coming calls and to give you some information, as much as we have, as potentially it may also change during the coming discussions we still have to do. But it's important for us to have as much information as you can have to go ahead and work on your ideas. So we'll discuss this in two parts. First, Alice Cibois from the Museum of Geneva and President of the Board of Experts will tell you about the contents, what kind of project you can imagine. And then later on, Peter Wandeler from the Museum of Fribourg and Vice President of SwissCollNet will tell you a bit more about technically the application steps and conditions we have. So now I leave the floor to Alice.
Thank you, Aline. Good afternoon, everyone. I will share my screen. Okay, does it work well? Okay, so as Aline just said, I will give you a few information regarding the contents of the call. And as a reminder, we have to keep in mind that this is all preliminary informations and the final version will come in due time. But we feel that it's the time to give you information so we can discuss them and maybe make also some adjustment if needed on the final version. So first, to give you an idea of what the project that will be funded by SwissCollNet should attend, what are the main goals. And globally, the idea is to start with a good way to have a nationwide interoperability of specimen data. We are confident that we will not be able to digitize all specimens held in Switzerland, but the idea is to have a good first step and go on into the good procedure to go towards a large amount of specimen digitized at the end of the project. The idea also is to generate open and fair data FAIR is an acronym regarding the fact that this data should be easily findable, accessible, interoperable with other data provider like JB, FAN-E, other institutions that are using international standards, and they can be reusable also. So to achieve that, we are confident that we need to strengthen the network between institutions. Collaborations exist already, but we want to increase them and to have projects that are as collaborative as possible. And that will be also discussed in the part explained by Peter. We know also that each project should provide a contribution in cash or in kind to match at least the funds provided by SwissCollNet. This is a requirement from the Confederation. Okay, a few words about what we considered, or we try to explain in a simple way, the definition of what we considered important collections. Of course, the importance of collections is a bit subjective, but we wanted to have some criteria that could help us or help the steering board towards the evaluation of the different projects. So what we considered important is first collections that include type specimens, as type specimens are really the highest value of specimen in systematics, and also specimens that are of high taxonomic relevance. So it's also a bit vague, but it could include groups for which there is very few specimens available, or groups that are poorly known, etc. We also include collections that have high patrimonial or historical value. This is really linked with the collectors that made this, that provide these specimens to the collections. And we also highlight collections that have globally a high value for the knowledge of Swiss and also international biodiversity and geodiversity, both in the past and in present. And this is really to emphasize the fact that also this is a project funded by the Confederation. We consider that all specimens that are held in Swiss institutions are as valuable, whether they are collected in Switzerland or abroad. They're all very important to increase the knowledge on biodiversity and geodiversity. And of course, we considered that collections that are highly relevant for scientific research are also an important values. Regarding the project contents, there is 3 main themes that could be linked with a project, but all of them are linked with digitization of specimen. The first one deals with the conditioning, the determination or redetermination, revision and databasing. But the idea, and I will develop this in the next slide, is to have this specimen available to be digitized or include in a larger digitized project. So as I said, really the core of what we intend, so as a project will provide as a result, is really to digitize specimen and to have a high quality standard implementation of the data. And also linked to this matter is the fact that we may need to have some training regarding taxonomy, but also regarding the collection management. So in the next 3 slides, I will develop a little bit these 3 main themes. The first one, conditioning, it could include the conditioning of unaccessed specimens which are in boxes, and we know the collector, but nobody ever opens these boxes. So that could be included in a project. Also, a first evaluation may reveal that there is a need of determination or redetermination or taxonomic revision linked to the specimen. Again, in the idea of having them available to be digitized or included in a database. There is also the possibility to revise existing database to put them into a higher standard that could lead to the fact that they will be connected with the Swiss virtual natural history collections. And globally, all these projects, all these very technical and material projects should lead to data that will be available for this globally collection. And some example, one project could include the conditioning and the digitalization of a collection which is currently at risk because it's badly conditioned, it's not known well enough, and we know that it's of national importance, for instance. Or it can include also the work on a collection that will be or is planned to be integrated into a research project. So all of this could lead to a proposal. So as I said, the core of the idea of the project is to really increase the availability of the data that are linked with the specimen. And when we talk about digitization, it implies both making the specimen data digitally available, so really what's on the label. It may include also an interpretation of this data. For instance, you have a locality and you add some georeferences to it. That's an interpretation of the data. But it can also include the enrichment of the specimen data through imaging. And imaging could be just a photo, it could be a 3D scan, and many other things that add more data to the specimen. So for instance, we can digitize all collections that are in different institutions from the same taxonomic group. That's a possibility. We can also develop a new technique for a specific type of collection, an object which is very small in 3D and for which a simple photography doesn't work, for instance. Or one project could also include the development of a new program to digitize with a shared objectives and equipment, including a collaboration between institutions where this equipment will travel and work on the different collections. That's examples. And finally, there is also a third theme related to training. And again, this training must be related to making specimen data available. So it could be training related to collection management. I'm sure you all read and know by heart this really nice book, but it's a very general information, and for some collections, some additional training and expertise might be needed. So it could be based on exchange of taxonomic expertise between institutions or having external experts hired for a specific project. But again, this training should be linked to producing data that will be available for the virtual collections. So as example, we said we can hire a specialist for training on a specific taxonomic group for which there is no expert in Switzerland. It could include a cross-training program or exchange of expertise between several institutions, or it can include a training phase within one program when developing a new technique related to digitization. So with this, I think I ended my short presentation, and I will give the floor to Peter, who will continue on that subject.
Yes, I'll. yes. So Peter, no, but thank you, Alice, for this presentation that hopefully gives you a bit of ideas and inspire you, or gives you hints on what's possible for you and your institution. And yes, Peter, your turn to let us know a little bit more specifically about the procedures we're working on.
So welcome. It's a pleasure to see that many people because at the end it's about people as well as about collections, what we're dealing here. I hope you've seen now my slide here, which Aline has prepared, so it wasn't me. Thank you. Just to switch to the next. Is that working? No. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay, I have to click on the right screen, not on the left screen. So as we heard now several times before, is that you should take all what we're saying here with a grain of salt, is that we are in a phase of developing this this whole procedure, and but it's the time now to share the information we have with you and having feedbacks from you. Yeah, so that's very important. So as you might know, we have 2 calls for proposal. The first one is opens the 1st of October, and it closes just before Christmas this year. And the second one will be in May, so half a year later, and closes on July 22. So that means that we have a financing period for the first call starting spring 22 to the end of August 24. And the second one starts half a year later in winter and ends as well in August 24, which means the first project can go on for 2 years, whereas the second call will end or will make up to projects from 1.5 years. We thought that we attribute a little bit more money, so 2/3 of the funding to the first call so that you can actually profit from the longer duration. And the second call are estimated to be about 3 million of Swiss francs. What is important and already confused some of the members of the steering board is that the main applicant isn't an institution, but a person. So each curator of an institution can submit a proposal. And this person obviously needs to work in a Swiss public and or non-profit collection holding institution. One person, one applicant can only apply for one project as a main applicant, but as well as he could then be involved in another project as co-applicant. And obviously several persons from the same institute can then submit to different projects. And on top of that, one person can apply to both calls. And obviously, if we need to deal with people from the private sector, this is also allowed, but obviously needs to be outlined in the proposal. Then it might be worth to define again what is a natural history collection. So we start with minerals, sediment samples, rocks, and meteorites. And on top of that, it's all the specimens of extant and extinct animals, plants, fungi, and microorganisms. So including paleontological, archaeozoological, and anthropological collections. It is important to note that biomedical and veterinary-oriented collections do not belong to what we define as a natural history collection. So the call for proposed application obviously need to provide a project plan with scientific and technical objectives, means and collaborations, a calendar, data quality, and long-term sustainability. I hope, and I'm a little bit selfish here, that this is going to be as efficient as possible. I think it's not only for those to actually apply for proposal, but also those who have to deal behind the scenes for this proposal. On top of it, you have to provide a budget, including the matching funds and the description of the respective contribution in case of collaboration. And I'll come to that later. And to make the workflow behind the scene much easier and to also find some referees for your proposal, it is assumed that it should be in English. So when we talk about financing, it is important to know that for each Swiss francs you get from the Confederation, you have to find another Swiss francs. Either is it in your own budget or you have to find a third party that gives you this franc. So the matching fund, as we call it, can consist in cash or in-kind contribution. Cash means that you have in your global budget or in your budget of your institute a fund dedicated to the project. So it can be funding for money for material or material for your collections you get anyway in your budget. And in-kind then is really what is related to cost generated by the project in terms of salary, usage of existing infrastructure, and consumables. And for this, we are trying to also develop a kind of a ladder of different salaries that we think are appropriate for that kind of estimation. No guidance defines the relative cash in kind proportion in the project budget. So SwissCollNet doesn't define how much cash you will get into the project and how much in kind you can contribute. But as it is quite clear, is that cash contribution is obviously highly encouraged. This is also related, I think, to what Jürg said at the beginning, because then it pops up visually also in your budget, and the cantons, if it's on the level of cantons, are becoming more aware what actually happens with this money and that it goes into the collections. So the procedure is, and that's quite complex, we'll see that afterwards, is a formal check of the application by the SCNAT. Then, as I said before, there will be a phase where the project will be evaluated by international experts. And then a decision for fund allocation by the steering board and the ratification by the executive board of the SCNAT. And at the end, a notification again by the SCNAT to the person who submitted the project or the proposal. So this looks quite complicated. So I just go through this table here. So you have all the different levels of different groups involved. We start here with you. So you are the institutions. Then we have the scientific unit, as already described, the board of experts. Then you see that the steering board has a lot of responsibilities and a lot of work to do. The executive board of SCNAT, and then the external reviewers. So where we are at the moment is here. So we are in this phase of the workshop where we gather feedbacks from you. These information, along with the technical requirements which are already which have been already established, and the initial call by the steering board will go back to the steering board to complete the call. Then it will be ratified by the executive board of the SCNAT, so that it can be then published for the first call in October 2021. And then the work is up to you. You can then submit your proposal, which will then, as I mentioned before, formally checked by the scientific unit of the SCNAT, goes to the steering board. The steering board will initiate the review process. External reviewers will look at your proposal. Then they will be ranked, evaluated. This goes back to the steering board, which will finally rank them, decide on the funding, ratify the funding, will then be assigned or ratified by the executive board. And finally, you get then the letter, whether you get or not the funding here early spring 2022. So it's quite complicated, and that's why it needs some time to develop. But as far as I see, at least, we are advancing very well, and that's also due to the scientific unit who's doing a wonderful job here. After the decision, funding project start date, as I mentioned before, is between April and September 2022, and it needs to end at the end of August 24. And you have to submit an annual report and the final report, which will include the process on this scientific or on the collections, as well as on the finances. If your proposal in the first round is rejected, you can submit it in the second round or in the second call. And I think I'm at the end. So I assume that there are some questions.
Yes, probably. Not that many yet, but I suggest we take a little break, like a 15-minute break we are a bit ahead of schedule, so we have time. It's a lot of information, and don't hesitate to forward your questions in the chat. And we'll surely also have time for oral questions when we come back. So don't hesitate to ask, because I think any question that can pop up now is useful for us and for the others who are listening. So don't be shy. So I suggest we come back at 2:10, if it's okay for everyone. So see you in 15 minutes.
Ciao, les questions arrivent.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We can see that the break has been very inspiring to you. Questions have been coming in. Thanks a lot for all your contributions. Anne is still being organizing stuff. She's ready. It's coming. Okay.
I can start.
Okay, so Anne, thank you for having gathered all these questions. Some are related, so we'll try to address them in groups and go ahead.
So I won't mention the name of the person. It will be easier. I just asked the question and you recognize the question if it's okay for you. The first one is, can matching funds come from cantons, which would be also from the öffentliche Hand, so public money? To Peter.
Yes, simple as that, yes. Matching funds can come from the canton, but obviously can come from other sources as communities or third parties, whatever. Was that the question?
Thank you. The second one, that's a fusion of two questions. Is there a maximum or minimum amount of money one can request per project? Is there guidance also with the amount of money which can be asked? To maybe also Peter? You're the chosen one.
Christoph, am I allowed to?
Yes, Peter, you are.
Okay, so I think there is still a discussion going on, but we agree that there is an upper limit as well as a lower limit for projects to be submitted. And at the moment we discussed as the upper limit for a proposal is 200,000 Swiss francs, which comes from the Confederation. So that means the total budget of a single project then would be 400,000 Swiss francs, which is then quite a large project. The lower limit is at the moment, as far as I know, 25,000 Swiss francs in total. So that means for the upper limit, 100,000 per year. If there is a project that will include a lot of collaboration between institutions, then as far as I know, but Christoph, please correct me, then the project can be larger. That's the state of the discussion at the moment.
Merci. Christoph, would you complete this or it's okay?
In principle, it is okay. I mean, then 2 different proposals should be submitted. And then, of course, various accepted proposals or projects may cooperate. This is still our wish. And then, of course, the total amount of money will be a multiple of these 200,000.
So the next question is for Alice. It's about the criteria for availability for the SVNHC. Are they already known? And how can I estimate the relevancy for scientific research? And linked to this question, it was also asked, why is relevance for scientific research rated more highly than relevance for applied studies or research? For instance, red lists, atlas for certain taxa, species, population, protection, etc. And the last question is also that smaller institutions will have difficulties to justify scientific relevance as they have no chance to do their own research. How can you answer to this criteria for the SVNHC?
Okay.
Alice.
Thanks, Anne. I'll start with availability. Right now, it's very large, it's very vague. It really relies to the fact that the data can be included into a database. And this really is a kind of information you can find in the handbook. For those who have heard about it, it's related to standards like Darwin code or things like this, but it's not very specific yet, but it will be very standard. So if you have already a database, it's probably available for a future virtual collection. Specific detail will be provided, but it should not be an issue. If you have already a database, it will be very easily available to a larger collection. And if you don't have a database, please look at the handbook and go to other colleagues that have already started a database as a model. So that should not be an issue for everyone. Regarding the relevance regarding scientific research, it may not be clear from what I said, but important collection doesn't have to fulfill all the criteria. This is one criteria among the others. So your collection can be very important related to a collector, but you don't have a research project. It's fine, it's completely fine. But in another way, you can put forward one collection that is really important for a research project, but which doesn't have an historical importance. It's fine also. So all these criteria are not cumulative. It could be one, it could be two, either. It's just a way to help us to evaluate the importance of collections. But no problem if you don't have a research program associated with your collection can still be important regarding other criteria. I think I answered this kind of 2 questions. Is that?
Thank you.
Okay.
The next one is for you. Oh yeah.
Anne. Sorry, but there was also the question of the relationship between scientific research and applied research, and do we make the difference or? Sorry,
yes, I forgot. We didn't mention applied products, but that's a good point, and that's also be linked with the importance of collection. So thank you for the person who provides this idea, but that could be another criteria related to the importance of collection. If this collection is used to provide a red list or a specific product that is linked to conservation, it's also important, yes.
Thank you. The next question is also for you, Alice. You can redirect it if you want. Is there a possibility that projects related with building the infrastructure for collection digitization can also be funded?
I'm not sure I get the point of this question.
That was the questions. I read all the that's a question from Beda Hoffman saying, as I understand, projects to be funded should be directly collection related and produce data from real collections. Is there a possibility that projects related with building the infrastructure for collection digitization can also be funded? So more organizational than direct data producing?
I think so, because we mentioned the fact that, for instance, revising an existing database to modify it to that it will be in the right format should be funded. So yes, I think if I understand what the question, that possibility could be included into a proposal.
Thank you. The next question is more about to Peter. It's about the time frame of the application. 2 persons mentioned the problem of budgeting process who are from the institution who are not similar to the SwissCollNet process. So yeah, what do we do? Because the budget 2022 is already in the pipeline.
Yeah, I know quite well this problem. I face it as well. I think this is also something we can then discuss in the group, which will deal with the finances, because we probably have to develop our own strategies. But there are two things. One is that it's not 1 year, it's 2 years. So you have another go for your own budget on the cantonal level for 2003. So that might be relevant if you then put out more, or you demand more money, because at the end of 2 years, you need to fulfill this matching funds, not at the first year, obviously with the risk that you don't get it from the canton. And the second is, as I tried to explain beforehand, is that in cash can be interpreted, or I do interpret in cash quite broadly, in the way that you can add budget classes like, or classes, I don't know in English, like you need for material for your museum, or you have expenses for new machines or whatever. So just be creative and find some sources in your budget, in your cantonal budget, and do put that up, and little things will make up still quite a sum. But I do think that if we go more into detail how we should deal with, how we can find funding, we can discuss it in the smaller financial group. Sorry.
Merci. The next questions is more to Christoph, because it's about the program in general. 6 million plus 3 million is a total of 9 million. Where disappeared the 3.5 million Swiss francs? How is it used?
Okay, thank you for this question. First, we have also to cover the costs of the office at SCNAT. And then we have also some parts of the budget reserved for projects that are not subject to proposals. This is, for instance, the establishment of the framework of the Swiss Natural History Collection. This is a project that we have already started with. And we are then a little bit conservative in the total allocation of the funds for the moment. We will promise that we will spend all the money in the 4 years. But that's what we can offer at the moment.
Merci, Christoph. The next question is, someone write that they have a really extremely important collections, but in extremely bad shape. Is it possible to ask money for the conditioning of this collection and restoration of the collection? Maybe to Alice.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think it fully fit into the conditioning theme, but it will have more chance to pass, because it will be competition, we hope, between too many proposals regarding the money we have. So to be competitive, this project should, in theory, include some digitization of this collection. So obviously, conditioning is, in this case, very important. And that's clearly, for instance, a collection at risk or not available. But you will have more chance to pass if at least part of the budget of this project is used to finally, at the end, put some digital data of this collection on a database, clearly.
Merci. Next question. It's a general one or so. A project involving only one institution will have less chance to be funded than another that is working with another partner. To Alice.
Yes, it's the same thing. In both projects, as chances are equal, a project with collaboration will be put forward in our preference list. I would say. It doesn't mean that all project has to be collaborative, but if the level is the same, collaboration will be a plus.
Merci. The next one is can money invested in a project prior to the SwissCollNet call for projects count toward a cash contribution by an institution? To Peter.
Frankly, I have no idea.
So
Christoph.
So if you invest in an old project, can you use it in your application?
I would say no, because otherwise you can calculate the salary of a keeper for the last 10 years and then come up with a reasonable amount of money. This is not what we want to achieve with this call. So I would say it's clearly the self-funding, the in-kind money during the project phase which counts.
Merci. Yet a question, I think, to Alice. It's about the collaboration with non-natural history collections. Are they also welcome to gain more insight into the whereabouts of an important collector or dig into history of science? So, for example, collaboration with libraries, archives, things like this. Could it be a collaboration?
It's a tricky question. I think we really want to focus on the data linked to a specimen. And if this data comes from another source, as archives or library, I think it may be, it may include, but it really has to link with the specimen. So if you have, for instance, archives of the collector, of the history of the collector, I don't know if it will fit. It's a bit, I would think, on the edge of what we would like to have at the end. The ultimate goal is to make the data of the specimen available. So it has to fit into that goal.
In the same idea are original paintings of specimens, for example, publishing identification keys, books, etc., also considered as potential collections that can be funded for a project?
Again, I'm not sure. It has to, it's borderline. If it's linked to specimen and, for instance, the specimen has disappeared and what's left is if the drawing, okay, it's very valuable, for instance, for type specimens, but it has to be in very specific case and very well argument. I think it will be on the limit of what we will be interested in.
And the last one linked with this topic is Michel Huviller from the Swiss Alpine Museum said that they have a collection of historical photographs and documents which could be interesting for geology, glaciology, this kind of information.
I see the question. Yeah,
it's also borderline.
I think this is over the line. I think it's extremely interesting. I'm not saying that, but it's really a valuable collection. But if it's not linked with physical specimens that are held in collections, I think it will be difficult to justify funding in that case. If it's, for instance, pictures of a geological formation from which there is specimens that are digitized, yes, but if it's very broad and general, even if it's very interesting, I'm not sure it will fall out into the funding procedure.
Merci. The next one is it possible to include the acquisition of equipment necessary for digitalization of the collection in the budget? And in this case, a 50-50 balance is also required. also to Alice.
Okay, I think we discussed that in the call proposal, and the idea was to allow the buying the equipment for digitization, but if it's justified that it cannot be shared, for instance, we don't want everyone to buy his little station and if there is another one in the museum next door. It's a bit of the idea. So we would like to have, when it's possible, shared equipment. But if it's not possible and if it's well argued, I think it can be founded. But it's still something we are discussing, this issue within the boards. And the 50-50 balance, if I understand, the 50 balance is between, what you mean is between the contribution from the Confederation and the matching fund. And this has to be global. So this balance doesn't have to be for each equipment or each salaries. It's in the globality of the project, you have to have matching funds that fits the fund you are requesting. But for instance, part of the matching fund could be salaries and you are asking for infrastructure. So, and the opposite is possible also. So the matching, the 50-50 is on the globality of the project.
Merci. There are two link questions. I would say to Peter. So I read the question. Will SwissCollNet invest into digitization infrastructure that then can be used by projects such as an efficient herbaria workbench workflow? Wouldn't this be more efficient use of resources than each applicant budgeting their own infrastructure? And related to this question, will the SCNAT manager website listing what is being proposed, developed, planned by the different institutions so that the resources are not wasted to rapidly develop a similar solution, being it a bioinformatic or technical solution in different independent institutions? Also, is the SCNAT well aware of what already exists in the Swiss landscape that can be further developed? Really long one, but I think it's a good one. So Peter?
I don't know whether the Board of Experts already discussed the sharing or the information on infrastructure. I think this is quite an interesting go. Whether it's, but on the other hand, I think it's also up to the institutes or to the applicants now organizing themselves among other applicants that they should be aware who else did submit and or ask for funding for infrastructure. So I can't really answer this. Yeah.
Someone could answer. Oh, Alice.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer fully the questions too, but this is where I think the survey will be important. This famous survey that most of you have already gave some information a few years ago, but I think this survey will include some part regarding what infrastructure already exists within institutions. And if it's not, at least we will add that section. So that could help us to have before the end of the year some idea of a global idea of where are the infrastructure already. But regarding the sharing of information, we'll think about it. It's a good point. But obviously I mean, Switzerland is not that big, and that's also the point of the discussion we will have this afternoon. The idea is to collaborate with other museums that have similar collections or are nearby, or you have already collaboration going on, and eventually having shared infrastructure is really the goal for as much as possible.
Thank you. Werner?
Yes, just maybe to add from like the Board of Expert discussions, I remember it, you know, it's important to this question that it's not SCNAT which will build or buy infrastructure, but I think if someone wants to take the lead to provide important infrastructure and share it with others, I think that's within the aim of the call. But as Aline said, it's not the idea that each single museum buys expensive infrastructure, and that's why the sharing is important. But we can say that SCNAT is not itself building up an infrastructure in parallel to the museums.
Next question is, what will the SVNHC provide as a setting for data publication? For example, can we only apply for projects that will produce data that can be fully integrated in the SVNHC? Or can we come up with our own framework to release, publish the data if nothing similar already exists in the SVNHC? To Alice.
Okay, so the idea of this collection is to have a single access to the database. But as this program is still in development, so we don't know exactly how it will work, but really the idea is to have a data aggregator coming from the database that will stay in the institutions. So it's really independent, in a way it's independent. The creation of this virtual collection is a structure which is independent from the individual database that each collection is building. And the idea, we will not, for instance, impose a software. We will not impose to use FileMaker or Specify or anything. But the idea is to have a standard format, and it has been the same in every country in Europe or around the world. So the standards exist. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And to use this format that could help, that will allow this data aggregator to take the data and to have just one place where anyone, the public or another researcher, can type a species name and to find all the specimens that are digitized in SwissCollEction and in which museum or collection they are. So I hope it answers the question, but it really says that you go forward with your own database, having in mind global international standards, and this will fit into the Swiss virtual collection.
Merci. Next question is also to you, Alice, I think. How will the collaboration with GBIF look like? Is there a plan to integrate, adapt different available databases with different templates into GBIF? So it's related to your related answer.
Since the beginning, we are discussing all this project with local GBIF Switzerland representative, but also we have linked with general GBIF. So obviously it will be collaborative, but GBIF only deals so far with biodiversity. It includes paleontological, but it doesn't include geoscience. There are other international projects linking geoscience, but the idea of the virtual Swiss collection is to have all specimens of natural history in one place. So part of the information will be dealt with link with GBIF, but part also will be really specific to our collections. So yes, again, yeah, the different templates from GBIF, and this all should be, I'm not a specialist of data, but this should all be, how do you say, available, and the integration of specimen in one database to the other should be possible.
Merci. Yet it's more for Peter. It's about the in what way must the subsidiary financial resources be guaranteed or secured beforehand? The budget processes in the cantons will long lead times on a very different schedule to the application process. So what do you think?
Yeah, but in the end of the day, at the end of the project, you need to have the matching funds. I think this is just the way it works. as earlier you have the budget secured, as more no, I think it's important to have it as secure as possible. But it's also, so from my experience, it is also an argument, if you can bring up money from extern, then the cantons will hopefully also be more willing to support the project themselves. So I think there is a give and a take in both directions. But I think it's important that you can guarantee as much as possible the in-kind when you submit the project.
Merci.
Anne?
Oui, c'est fini.
C'est fini. No, there are some more questions, but I think Alexa Gugisberg raised her hand if she still has something to say.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to come back on Alice Cibois' answer before because of GBIF and so forth. I mean, at least for biodiversity data, there exist solutions, international solutions, and I'm just wondering whether we really need a Swiss node or a Swiss portal whatsoever, whether we couldn't actually use these maybe 3 million francs differently instead of establishing a new framework, database framework, knowing that something maybe already exists internationally to which we could simply connect to. I mean, this is more of a sort of a debate maybe for the workshop afterwards, but something to think about it, because we know how much it costs to develop these portals, and tons that exist. And in the end, what we want is to be linked, I think, worldwide and not necessarily within Switzerland. But this is more of a remark than a questions, maybe for follow-up workshops.
Yeah, thank you. Michael, maybe you want to remark on this or no? Yeah.
Yes, so the virtual natural history collection is one product SwissCollNet will deliver. So, I mean, we have to deliver something in the end. And then we have right now this pre-project going on. It just starts right now, where we exactly discuss such questions. Does it make sense that we build an additional portal? Does it make sense that we, for example, extend GBIF so that GBIF takes over this responsibility? So these are questions which are hard to answer and where we have different opinions on it. So that's why for around half a year, we have specialists. It's a separate project, specialists working on these questions. They talk to DISCO, they talk to international initiatives, they go to the collections and collect data. And in the end, they will present a couple of options which have a price, how much it costs. And then we decide at SwissCollNet and in the boards what is the best options, and especially in the long term, what makes sense with regard to the roadmap after 25 and so on. Yeah, but that's a good question, Alicia, surely.
Okay, so one last question, if I check the time. So what about historical published on and not published data without specimens in the collection? For example, flora, to Alice.
If I understand well the question, it's again related to information, historical or archival information related to specimens. I think if it increases the quality and the interest of the data associated with specimen, it fits into our project. But again, it has to be linked as specifically as possible with objects that are held in our institutions.
Yep. Maybe one remark. Probably we haven't fully answered all the questions specifically. We'll go around and try to, after the workshop, and try to see if we can give some extra precisions and give a feedback with the presentations and send to all participants. If you feel you need to re-ask your question, you can write to SwissCollNet, and it's me, so I'll include this. But maybe there are two other questions related to the evaluation process, and maybe Peter or Alice the questions is who evaluates and how the ongoing of an accepted project. So the intermediate reports who will go into that and validate for the next stage. And before that, if a project is rejected, will we give some feedback on why the project has been rejected?
I can start with the first question regarding who is evaluating your project. As far as I know, we haven't decided yet on that, whether we have for each project, whether we're going to assign 2 referees for each project. And obviously then we would need some names from you to have additional names on a very long list, which will then be needed to find the referees, or whether we're going to give to a referee a couple of projects, and then the referee will simply rank the certain project in a certain manner. But maybe Alice knows there a little bit more because you discussed that already in your group.
Yes, so that's different question. The first question is about how the project will be evaluated at the first round, at the first step of the call, and that will be through the expert. And as you said, we haven't decided yet how we will, how much work we will give to the expert. Do we have 100 of experts, or do we have less and we give them more work? That will be seen. I think the question was also related to the fact when who is evaluating the project as it runs. So for instance, the first annual report, I think it's the steering boards, I would say, with the expertise, if needed, of the boards of experts, but that we should check that on our schedule. And the second question, if the project is rejected, yes, you will have feedback for the reason that, especially for the first call, we really hope that projects that get rejected for some reason on the first call, they can work again on the project to submit it to the second call. The idea is not to be, the idea is to spend all the money and to help as many people as possible. So if really there is some drawback in one project and that can be fixed, we really hope to help the people that provide this project to resubmit it to the second call. And really the idea is to help as much as possible to increase the quality of our collections.
Thank you, Alice. Is there maybe Michelle Price wanted to say something? I don't see her, but
yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. So I want to touch on just a few elements. So the question of, are we linked to international organizations and the outside world? So the answer is yes. So I'm also the acting chair of CTAF. So through CTAF, we have lots of connections to what's going on in the European scene with respect to collections. And also I have a voting seat on the DISCO governing board. So we have lots of connections between the initiative that's going on in Switzerland and things that are going on in Europe, and also links directly into the development of the DISCO infrastructure. So if you haven't heard about it yet, DISCO is a distributed scientific institutions research infrastructure that's just been accepted onto the S3 roadmap and is in the process of being developed. And this initiative would like to align with DISCO in the eventuality that Switzerland would join the DISCO consortium at some point in the future. And of course, this is a political issue and very much linked to the question that was introduced at the beginning, which is the longevity of this particular initiative. So one of the aims of this initiative is really that it doesn't finish in 2024. So the steps we're taking right now, as was outlined also by Christoph, are building towards us continuing to work as a community. And I think what we have to bear in mind is this is the beginning for us, and we need to find ways to work as a community so that we really get this collaborative network, this collaborative intention sorted out and solidified for the future. So the possibilities that we have now under the SwissCollNet initiative are really to mobilize collections. And this is in all sorts of ways. So one of them is getting them out of the boxes, having a look what's in them, getting labels, getting them into the collections so they're available for researchers, ideally passing through the step of digitization. And it just wanted to make it clear that digitization is a very broad term that can mean databasing, simply the databasing of specimen data, but it can also mean the databasing accompanied with images. So it's not just limited to scanning of images, it can also be just simply the databasing of specimens. And of course, the question of connectivity to GBIF is very, very important. And as was stated, we do have a group that's working on alignment with GBIF, and this will be, as well in Michael Grief's group, is really to align properly. An alignment with respect to data standards, initiatives, how to database specimens. So we also have contacts with groups like TEDWIG and the ISTC, who are all currently working on database standards. And we're going to be, there's something called the MIDS, which is just about to be released, which is a CTAF, DISCO, TADWIG initiative on minimum information for digitized specimens. This is going to help us guide us into what we need to put in our databases to align with international policies. And so going back to the initial intention of SwissCollNet, I think SwissCollNet, we really need to think about the mobilization of specimens. We are not actually going to be doing research under the SwissCollNet initiative. What we're doing is providing digital access to specimens, getting our specimens out of the cupboards and into the collection spaces. And if they're already into the collection spaces, available for researchers, both in Switzerland and internationally. So just to remind, we're not actually doing research here. We're really, really focusing on collections and mobilizing these collections. And the SwissCollNet, for me, is a really marvelous opportunity to work together as a community and to get our specimens really fantastic recognition and scientific use. But that's by other people as well as ourselves, but the scientific use really comes as an effect of having this network functioning. So
let's see. Thanks, Michelle. It's been a great discussion, and there's more time for discussion, but I suggest we split into small groups. So really now the idea is, of course, if you have some more questions about SwissCollNet, please ask them. We'll record them, but it's not really time anymore to answer these questions. The idea really is to give you what would have been possible if we had met personally, is you meet persons and you talk to them at the coffee break, or that's kind of a coffee break by group that we are offering. So you have these 10 or 11 group discussion that will come as a list, and you'll be able to choose. I'm gonna just explain to you how you can connect to these group sessions. And I'm just gonna show you a small presentation just to show you how it will look. Okay, so there are 11 sessions. There are even more sessions than like empty rooms. So if you wish to discuss with another person or 2 other or 3 other persons, you select a private room and you can just discuss as you want. So at the bottom of your Zoom window, there are small icons, and there is one. So mine is in French, but you'll recognize the icon, and you click on it. And then you'll see it will appear a list of all the sessions, and you click on the one you want to join. We made sure that there are enough rooms for everyone, so that we don't go over the 10 persons per session, so that the discussions can stay as informal as possible. And when you are in the session, you'll see there are moderators that will be there, and you can start discussing. They may suggest you connect to a mural space, which is a whiteboard. It's so they will give you the link, and when you connect, you'll find such a window where you'll have an animal pseudo. So I hope you are happy with the animal you'll be given. And but you can also put your real name next to it, which will help understanding who's writing what on the whiteboard. So in this case, it's a shrimp, but you may be a fish or a lobster or whatever. As from now on, I'll ask Mariella if it's okay if the groups we can open the rooms, and I think it's open. Mariella, can you just confirm to me?
Yes, the rooms are open. You can choose your room and join it at any time now.
Okay, so you can select on the... And I forgot to say, if you want to leave a room, you can leave the room and get back in another. It's a really mobile system.
Sorry, I don't manage to join my room. What do I have to click?
You have to click 2, digitization scanning.
Yes. Doesn't work. I click on it.
Okay, wait.
Doesn't work neither.
So Mariella, wait, digitization. But you seem to be already, Michael? He left.
No, I'm here.
You're here. Can you, because...
Have you been able to see the icon, or Michael Greff in particular should have received an invitation to a room because I already pre-assigned you, or have you been able to see the icon on the bottom,
yes.
the breaking room? So you can just click on it and then you should be able to join the room.
I'm clicking right click and left click, nothing happens.
It's strange because, yeah.
Michael, ich muss auf die Zahl, neben der Ding hat es eine Anzahl, wie viele Leute...
Ah, dort muss ich draufklicken, okay, ja. Great, merci.
Bitte.
I didn't get that. So is anyone having a problem as well?
Sorry, the point was that you have to click on the number. It says how many people are in this breakout room, and then you click on the number, and then it says join. You can't click on the name. You have to click on that number of people who have already joined.
Okay.
That was that.
Has another person problems? Yes, no.
Yes, I can't find
you cannot at the bottom of your screen.
Yes, I click on the participants, but I don't see anything.
No. If you see participants, then talk, then share screen, and then there's reaction, and then there's the plus button.
I don't have a plus button. I have.
Can you
sometimes, if I may, sometimes if your screen is too small, it helps if you can widen it, or as Aline said, on the right side of reactions there is, with me it's called more, and if you go on it, it's called breakout sessions, and you can click on breakout sessions, and a pop-up window will show to you the rooms.
Because I only see reaction, and after that I don't have anything else.
Can you I don't know, maybe if you share your screen it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Are you on a computer or on your smartphone?
A computer, yes. It's.
So you don't have this icon with the 4 squares?
No, I don't see what you showed with the 4 square. I don't see that. I have participant, chat, share screen, record, reaction, and nothing else. So
I will try to assign you to a room. Do you know which room you would like to join?
It was entomology room.
Well, okay, there are two invertebrate rooms, so it's not like specifically entomology. It's room 11. So room 11, one is already almost full. So Mariela.
Just let me look. This is Barbara Koch. This is right.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
And try.
Sorry.
Now there should be a pop-up coming, and
exactly. Now I say join.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Anyone has other problems? Hélène Gabiou and Sonia Gerber, you want to stay in the main room or you want to join us?
On est en train de décider. We are trying to decide which room we're going to go.
Okay. Okay, but no worries.
Thank you.
And if you want a specific room, you can also select one. If you want your own room to discuss with someone specific, you can do.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess the others is okay.
We will stay here for any further help. Yeah.
It's very special, this moment where the people disappear. Like in a vortex, they are swallowed. Well, so for NAC, it's good. We
very ahead of time.
No, we are right on time.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 5 minutes ahead. But no, it's good.
Better ahead than late.
Yeah, and it gave us more time for the questions and the discussions, and it was good. So yeah, so at 15:50. You send this message and it appears on everyone's screen, or how does it work to tell them there's 10 minutes left?
Yes.
So everyone gets it.
Yeah. Usually it should come to everyone, and after then when I close the sessions, there is a 60-second countdown that the sessions will be closed.
The best moment of the discussion.
Yeah. Most productive 60 seconds.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, perfect. So I will just be here and listen if you need anything.
Yeah, thanks a lot.